Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending this webinar on the SAMR model. We're going to be looking at today ways that the SAMR model can be applied, applications that work with the SAMR model, and then we're also going to look at how SAMR model itself lines up to depth of knowledge, or DOK. Real quick, my name is Dylan Porter. Quick bio for you. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. Definitely love my home city. That's a picture of me at the Pike Place Market, but I definitely love Seattle. I don't plan on moving back, but I love the city itself. For those of you who don't know, I'm a high school dropout. I put that in my bio because I think it's an important thing in terms of my career and where I went and why I got an education. But you know, it took me a long time to get back into school and to finish my college degree at a later age. And dropping out of high school was an inspiration for me. So that was an important thing. I graduated from Northeastern Illinois University, got my master's in educational technology from Cal State Fullerton last year, worked in Chicago public schools. I was the founding teacher at LA Promise Charter Middle School. And that's how I actually met the folks at School to Home and CETF. And that's where I'm at now. As your senior program manager for some of the schools that are on this call or on this webinar. So for most people who are on this webinar, you should have a basic understanding of what SAMR is, because most people on this webinar have finished module 1. The SAMR model, again, just to reiterate, is a model created by Ruben Putadora. Very simple framework, very easy to explain to teachers who are new to using technology. That's why I really like to use it instead of TPAC. We will do a webinar on TPAC at a later date, but it's just a very quick way for teachers to understand how technology is being used in their classroom. It also is a great way for you to create a common language at your school site that your colleagues can use when you talk about what technology integration looks like in their classrooms. So that's just a basic overview of SAMR. You know, as we know, substitution is kind of our lower level, moving to the augmentation, modification, and redefinition. When we go into an expanded idea of what SAMR is, and this is kind of when we look at philosophically, when we start debating what does SAMR actually entail, and there's different ways to look at this, but one thing that I like is some work that was done by Jacqueline Stevens in regards to her view of what the SAMR model is. And she views it as a swimming pool. And I kind of adhere to this same format. I kind of believe this is probably the best way to look at SAMR, because we're not always going to be able to be working in the levels of redefinition and modification in our classrooms. It's almost impossible to do that. Substitution and augmentation are valuable tools in classrooms. They're not something to necessarily be frowned upon. I don't want that perception that we should frown upon the lower end of SAMR, like somehow it's a bad thing that those things are happening in the classroom, and that's just not. You are going to need to be doing substitution in your classroom. You are going to be needing to do augmentation in your classroom. If you're reading a PDF book on your students' tablets, I mean, that's a very basic level of substitution, giving them access to a novel on their computer. That's simple substitution, but is it beneficial for your classroom? I'd argue yes, especially if you have a limited budget for books. So we really want to take away that idea that substitution and augmentation are a bad thing. So what Jacqueline posits is that she posits that you need to be swimming between these different levels of SAMR. Sometimes you might need to go back to substitution or augmentation to rework a skill or practice a skill, and then go back once you've practice that skill, then you go back to those higher levels of modification and redefinition. The way I like to think about it, another way I like to think about it is this: substitution and augmentation are the points in which you can practice a skill or you can go over content with students at a lower level. And then as you work forward, think of modification and redefinition as you get, even in your standard lesson plan. That's when you start getting into larger projects, when you start working on cumulative projects or some sort of end of unit exam or something of that nature, something that you want to do that's going to be a little bit different to prove student understanding, but also requires more steps and requires much more work. If we sit in redefinition and modification all the time in our classrooms, number one, you're going to get burnout as a teacher. And then number two, your students are going to get burnout. We can't, project-based learning is a great thing, but it can't always be that. There has to be some sort of format for students to build skill and practice skill as well. And that falls under substitution augmentation. Any questions so far? I can't see the Zoom thing right now, but any questions so far? Okay. All right, so this is a great graphic to share with your team as well when you want to, if you're presenting on SAMR at a later date and you want to explain that idea of the swimming pool version of SAMR, it's a great graphic to show. All right, let's look at DOK, or depth of knowledge. When we talk about depth of knowledge, again, this is a hierarchical format. Now, it can be viewed very similar to SAMR in that way, that it's, initially it's viewed as a hierarchy, levels 1 through 4, with recall or DOK level 1 being the lowest level. A lot of you may have these charts. I used to keep one of these next to my desk, so when I lesson planned, I was able to kind of look at the different verbs for the DOK levels to understand what I was planning to do as a lesson, actually reaching that higher level of DOK. Mm-hmm. So you can see on DOK level 1, you have your recall. This is where students are remembering data or facts that you've given them or things they've read. Multiple choice questions, things that are very low in terms of what the student needs to know to do it. Moving forward to DOK level 2, that's when we're going to have students actually applying those skills, or concepts that they learned. So if they memorize a concept, a mathematical concept, at DOK level 1, some sort of recall concept, then at DOK level 2, we're having them apply those concepts to a mathematical problem. Again, the one thing to consider on that, though, there's still going to be one correct answer to be given, meaning there's going to still basically multiple choice. There's one right answer to be had. When we get into DOK level 3 or DOK level 4, and we want to think of it almost like SAMR, where you have like a line running between these two, right? You have a line running between these two. When you get into 3 and 4, this is where we're going to have students have more choice, more voice and choice in what they're doing. They're able to express their learning a little bit more clearly because they're given assignments or tasks that require strategic thinking, or they have to extend what they're thinking about into a larger format. So what I mean by that is, when we talk about DOK level 3, this is again why it links directly to SAMR, is that these are going to be more like projects that are improving student learning versus practice. So a good way to look at it is, and I'm sorry this is a little bit blurry. I don't know. I guess I didn't do enough high def, and I don't know why it's this blurry. I don't like the way it is. But if you look at, I've kind of lined this up, and you can keep this chart as well. When I'll go ahead and repost the PowerPoint into the comment section. But we want to look at these things kind of linked up, right? So look at that lowest level of substitution for SAMR. Then we can kind of link that up to the idea of recall or reproduction that you're going to get from DOK level 1. That idea of that, it's just recalling things, and SAMR's that same way. At substitution, students are going to be doing a lot of recall work. They are going to be doing a lot of just basic quizzes. They're going to be doing a lot of things that don't require them to do much outside of memorization and then showing what they've memorized or what they can recall. When we move forward to augmentation, we can link that directly to skills and concepts. So it might need more steps. So let's think of it like this. Let's go to the substitution level. Let's pretend for a second, well, since I was a history teacher, I like to use this example, but let's say you were teaching a unit on Chinese religions. So you're going over Buddhism, you're going over Taoism, you're going over Confucianism, and you're studying these ancient Chinese philosophies and religions. So if you were doing that at the substitution level, an activity might be for that. You might be having students do a quick quiz that's really simply, it's a quiz that's on Google Forms, and it just gives some basic questions asking about, which religion believes in, the Tao or the Way or something like that. And it's Taoism. So they select the right answer. They just have to recall what they remember. When we take that to the augmentation level, then we might add into that same quiz, it might be a multiple step question. Maybe we have a short video that's in there they need to watch and then answer a two-part question related to that video that's embedded into Google Forms. it's just another step, another level up. So it usually requires, like we talk about skills and concepts, it's going to require a little bit more of a step. And when we think about it as technology, it's just going to require a little bit more. Augmentation requires that it's something that you could not necessarily do on paper, and it needs to have some sort of technology aspect that could only be accessed through technology. Otherwise, it's not augmentation. When we look at this line here, let's take a look right here. Again, I should have bolded this, I guess, to make it a little bit more clear, but now we're over here. When we get into modification and redefinition and strategic thinking and extended reasoning, that's where you're gonna see those direct links again. So at your school site, when you start having conversation with your peers and you're talking to your administration and things like that, it's really important for you to link these things up. So when you're talking about SAMR, understand that if we're focused on SAMR as a school, then if we're focused on implementing SAMR with fidelity, then we're also really working towards those higher levels of DOK. And that's what most schools want anyway when we're creating lessons and creating our unit plans, is that higher level of DOK. So when we talk about modification, let's return to that idea of you're doing a unit on ancient China and on Chinese religion, and maybe in that modification level, now you have your students creating a pamphlet. Maybe they're creating a pamphlet that goes over the different religions. Maybe there's a pamphlet for each one, right? And explains, and when they're gonna have to plan that, they're gonna have to plan what those pamphlets look like. They're gonna have to choose a graphic design program, and I'll give you a graphic design program you can use later for different activities, but they're gonna need a graphic design program to create that. It's gonna require them to actually really plan out what those pamphlets are gonna look like. And also, that give, again, that those pamphlets also is going to require a student voice and choice, because it gives them an option to kind of choose what they want to do. Finally, when you get to that highest level of redefinition, let's stay on that same topic. If they are doing a unit on ancient China, then maybe now they're creating an actual multimedia video where each of the students in a group play the role of the different founders of each of those different religions. Maybe one is Confucius, maybe another's Lao Tzu, maybe another one is the Buddha Siddhartha himself, right? So you have these different people playing roles and explaining what the tenets of the religion are, and then creating that video and posting it to YouTube for people across the world to see. And that's kind of that. If you think about creating a project like that, that's not going to be done in a week. That's going to probably be a 2-week or a 3-week project, depending upon the quality of the multimedia you have your students tasked with creating. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so I really wanted to get into some different applications for you guys to consider as we go forward. I wanted to show you what those look like. I'm gonna stop real quick in terms of the full screen share, and I'm gonna come back to you guys as a group. I see we have a couple other people join, which is awesome. So what I want to talk about, and I'll show you on here as we go, we'll go to the smaller version of the presentation itself, and then I'll share the screen with you one more time. We'll look at each of the different applications that I'm talking about. Some of these you might have seen at the regional, but I want to make sure you have access to these and that you consider using these in your classroom. So let's go back to the share screen. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is YoTeach. If you were at the last regional, I did talk about YoTeach a little bit, just because it's a replacement for an application called Today's Meet, which early technology adopters, teachers who adopted technology are definitely familiar with, because it was a way for you to have digital classroom discussions. Now, there are plenty of tools to have digital classroom discussions. If you're using Google Classroom, you can use Google Classroom to be a way for you to have a digital conversation in your classroom as you teach. Now, the reason why YoTeach is very much a good replacement is that it enables it to be almost like a back channel. It doesn't have to take the core of your class. It can act as something you come back to at a later time. I put it at the substitution level because it's basically a substitute for classroom conversations. It is something you could do without technology. You could definitely have a classroom conversation without technology. But the benefit of YoTeach, and I'll go ahead and put it on here so you can kind of see it. The benefit of YoTeach would be, it gives you the option to create a room. Students who are in that room can then talk while you're teaching or while you're lecturing and ask questions, and you can go to that Yo Teach during your lesson as you teach and answer those questions. But the big benefit that I found in terms of using any sort of back channel conversation tool in your classroom is that your students who don't like to talk will use this more than they share with you in your classroom. So this is a great way for you to spur students who may be scared to put their hand up and talk out of embarrassment or just being shy. It gives them more of a chance to talk and be themselves. And I used to get questions on my Today's Meet from students who never talked in class, asking really complex questions about the material we were covering. And when I saw that happen, I knew that back channel was a big benefit to that. So, you know, Yo Teach is an option. Again, like I said, Google Classroom has gotten better, especially their comment sections have gotten a lot better and easy to manage, especially with the ability to mute students who may be doing things inappropriately on those chat rooms. But it is a great way to have those conversations. So that's Yo Teach. Another tool that I put on here is Open Library. Now, Open Library, I like Open Library a lot because, as I talked about earlier in the webinar, sometimes, depending upon your school's budget, you may not have access to novels. There may be books that you want to read and you don't have the budget to get a whole classroom set of that book that you'd like to cover, that novel you'd like to study. Open Library is it's a website dedicated to free access to novels, to full-length novels. Now, it does require students to set up an account on there, but it can be set up through Google. It can be a Google account, and then once they have access, they can check out a certain amount of books per month for free. So it's definitely a benefit for you. There are other versions of this out there. There are different open source book projects, like Project Gutenberg, I believe, is another open source book project. But these are books that are license-wise. They're enabled to be on here, and you can check these out. Like you can see even here for the kids section, it's quite extensive. And there's ways for you guys to have your kids check these out. And then you guys as a classroom can go ahead and use these as novel studies. Any questions so far from any participants? Okay, moving forward out of the substitution level, we're gonna move into augmentation. Again, all these tools will be in the presentation for you to access at a later date and share with your schools or test out in your classrooms. Formative, if you click the formative, so you can't click the link, but Formative is an app or an application that allows you to do a lot of different things, but primarily the real benefit of a tool like Go Formative, or Formative as it's called, is that you can embed PDFs and then add questions to those PDFs really in a really easy and simple way. So let me show this. Like, wow, this is 2 years. I can't believe it's been 2 years since Prince died. Anyways, so I made my students learn about Prince when he passed away some years ago. And what I did was, I knew that I didn't have Newsela Premium. I like Newsela or Newsela, whatever you like to call it, but I like it a lot. I mean, it has great content. You can level things for your students, you know, from all the way down to a 3rd grade level, all the way up until a 12th grade level, depending upon how well they read. And so it was great for my classes where you are going to have a very wide range of student ability. And so I could do the same article, but then give it to them at different levels. The problem was I wasn't able to do a digital version of it and printing this without doing premium, and I didn't have the budget for that. At the same time, printing a Newsela article could also be a pain because it required you to print a lot of pages. And so the way that I got around that was to be able to turn the Newsela into a PDF, print it as a PDF, and then upload it into Formative. And that way I could get question answers immediately. And you could end up creating really strong, you could create even larger questions outside of the multiple choice that's allowed on Newsela. So here's multiple choice questions here. If I wanted to, all I need to do is hit the plus button and I can add all these different options here. Now, you can see here that see it says that audio is a premium version. Audio is premium. Again, there's another way to get around that. There's an app called SpeakPipe I used to use to be able to record and do the audio for my students. I'd read the entire article and then read the questions for them so they could listen as well for some of my lower kids. So again, great tool. The tools that I'm showing you today, I try to show only free things that have definitive free aspects to them that you can use. But this tool right here, definitely give it a shot. If you use PDFs in your classroom, if you ever printed a worksheet, instead of printing that worksheet and you have one-to-one, print that worksheet as a PDF, upload it into GoFormative, and try to see how that works out for your classroom. If you feel like that's a little bit of a better way for you to do it and give you something a little bit different. The kids enjoy it too, because you can add videos in there. Like if I wanted to, I could add a video of Prince so the kids can have that aspect to understand what Prince looked like or how he danced or what he sounded like. You can do a lot of different stuff with that. So that's formative. Any questions about formative? Okay. Moving forward, no red ink. For those who haven't had access to that one yet, this is, again, I try to show tools that are free. No red ink is a grammar application tool. It's an augmentation tool because, again, you can do grammar practice on a piece of paper. You can sit down on a piece of paper and really go over different aspects of grammar. But no red ink is augmentation because when you get onto no red ink, it's going to have your students choose personal things that they're into, things that they care about. And then once they choose those things will be part of what they, the questions they're asked. It'll ask their name will be in the question, maybe their friend's name, maybe SpongeBob SquarePants or whatever the character they follow. Maybe if they like, it's the baby or whatever, the rapper, the baby. Like, it doesn't matter. They have all those listed out for the students to choose from. And then they give them age appropriate questions related to those characters that they chose or those interests that they put in there. Really like this tool. Great independent practice area for your students, something for your students to use for independent practice. Any questions so far about no red ink? Okay, and then finally for augmentation, quizzes. I'm sure, hopefully a majority of you who are on this right now have used quizzes. If you haven't, please do so. It is an app that you can use to create quizzes that students can take. The big benefit of it, the thing I love about the most, is that it has a lot of memes embedded into it. Memes are embedded into the questions. So when students get something right, they have a meme that responds like, oh, good job, something to make them laugh. And they get something wrong, and there's a meme usually that's embedded in there as well that talks about, like, maybe makes them laugh to it, like, you know, the mistake that they made. Really, the data on here is great. If you're doing questions on here, the data that you get back is quick, it's effective, and it's a great way to see where students are at in terms of just overall skill. You can see also one of our, I think our speaker for our Leadership Academy, she'll be coming in. Alice Keeler's on here. They took her little tweet here and put it on there, which is kind of cool. Okay, so that's quizzes. Hopefully you guys have heard of that one. If you haven't, again, definitely something you want to test out moving forward. We'll go down to the next level. We'll cross that line over into modification and redefinition. So a couple of tools here, especially for any math teachers who are on this right now. If you haven't started using Prodigy in your classroom, please make sure this is something you test out and set up in your class. Prodigy, again, is a tool that I was introduced to last year. And I saw so much student engagement from this tool. Students were asking me, I was an English and history teacher, and they would come out, Porter, if I finish all my work, can I do a Prodigy? Can I play Prodigy? Sure. I mean, if I can figure, if you finish everything and you have nothing else for my class, definitely. The reason why is because it's an online multiplayer game. The teacher who uses this creates a class. Every student in that class, if it's within a school, I believe too, I think everyone within the school can fight each other on here, and they're fighting each other using mathematical equations. Now, why did I put this underneath modification? I put this under modification because this is something that is beyond just an augmentation of a skill. It's going to get students the ability to create avatars, to represent themselves. It gives it's a huge amount of student voice and choice with Prodigy. It levels automatically to student ability. So depending upon how well your students do something, it's going to level directly to them. If they struggle with a type of problem, it's going to alert you as a teacher that they're struggling with a certain type of problem. It just does a lot of different things for no money, no cost. There's a premium edition. Of course, there's usually always a premium edition with these different applications, but even the core free product is very, very strong and something that every math teacher who's teaching middle school math should be using. And I say that with conviction because I just, the level of engagement is just off the charts for your students if you use this. Any questions about Prodigy? Okay. Moving forward, we'll look at the app that I talked about earlier, which is for graphic design. If you do have students creating different designs, different things that they need to do, like if they are making a pamphlet for the different ancient Chinese religions, or maybe they're making an infographic on how to on PEMDAS, or they're doing an infographic on the water cycle, or a poster about the galaxy. It could be anything, but this gives kids professional tools to use when they are creating their graphics, and it's very empowering in that way. Students can create all sorts of different things. They're mostly mine, but they can create all sorts of different things on there, and once students get good with it, they'll ask to use it. So I had students who, first, I don't know how to use this report, I don't know what to do. As they got more comfortable using Canva, they started making really, really, really well done graphic design products. And again, those products could be anything from a standard poster, an infographic. You could have them do a resume. Maybe they're doing a resume. We stay on that topic. They're doing a resume for Lao Tzu, the inventor of Taoism. They're giving a resume as background, right? It could be anything like that. And also, it's giving them some real world skills. There's something, I know how to make a resume. I made a resume for Buddha when I was in middle school. So it definitely is an app that you want to consider, and you have students do. And then the products are great. You print these products out when you're done and put these up in your room, and it looks really professional. Students feel really good about what they've done and what they've created. Any questions on Canva? Oops, I didn't mean to do that. All right, and then, sorry, finally we'll go on to the last two. That is Screencastify. Most of you guys, if you've been with School to Home for a little while, you know Screencastify. I will keep hyping it up, but it always stick in my read definitions. I always leave it there. It really allows your students to become teachers. It allows them to teach content, allows them to teach skills. It allows them to share their work globally because it directly loads to YouTube. It is installed as on your browser. That's so powerful for kids. You got to talk to your IT people, whatever district that you're in, make sure that it's possible to add that as an extension. But if you have Screencastify on it as an extension on your web browser, students can do presentations using their web browser. They can get into a quiet place in the classroom, turn on Screencastify, and create a presentation off their browser. There's nothing more powerful than that in terms for student voice and choice, to allow them to become the teachers in your classroom and share what they're learning with their peers. So definitely something, I think, that if you're using Chromebooks, this is definitely something you want to consider adding or having allowed at your school site for students to create really, really strong products that prove their learning in a lot of different ways. It's not just us creating a poster or doing an exam. I mean, students can prove they understand concepts and content using Screencastify in really strong ways. Any questions on the extension Screencastify and how it works? Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here to the thank you, and then I'm going to post this one more time. Let me post this into the chat. I'm going to stop sharing the screen again, and I want to say, first of all, thank you. But in the bottom of this, there's resources that I put here for you guys that you can access later, that you can look at and kind of go through, and it just gives you an idea of what these things can do. I also put the presentation tool Mentimeter. We didn't talk about that here today, but If you've been to any of our, if you've been to the regional, we used it this at the last regional, and moving forward, I think we're going to use it a lot more. It's very similar to Nearpod or Pear Deck in terms of what it can do, and there's a free version of it. Here's the link right here for anyone who needs it. Yeah, but that's about it. So any questions for me, anything that you'd like to share, I actually really would like that. If anyone here has a tool that they've used or they've been using at their school site that's been really effective for them, this is the great time to share with some of the other people on this webinar. And then we can kind of go over where that tool falls on SAMR model. Does anyone have anything that they've used that they'd like to talk about? Oh, such a quiet group. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's it, guys. I mean, it wasn't that long. It ends up being about 40 minutes, but I really thank you guys for attending this webinar. You have my contact information. Anyone who does, if you receive the email, you definitely have my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much, Ond. I appreciate that. If you guys have any questions, if you have ideas that you just don't want to talk about it on the webinar and you're like, oh, this is a great thing I found, Dylan, I want to share this, please do so. I'm not in the classroom anymore. It's the one part of it that is unbeneficial is that I don't get a chance to test a lot of this stuff with students. And so I'd really like to get feedback on how these things work out. If you use any of these tools in your classroom, if you use these, let us know, share with the group, how did it work out? If you started using screencast, how did that work? What did your students create? Those type of products, you can bring those to our regionals. We'd love to see that stuff so we can share that with the whole group of what your students are doing with the technology. And a lot of times that stuff acts as inspiration to other teachers who may be a little bit, have trepidation about using technology. Thank you guys for the feedback. I appreciate it. Any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email. And I thank you guys. Thanks for attending. Everyone have a good rest of your Thursday.